good for me. And basically, what that means is that I have more flexibility to coach folks to the process that they've learned. Now, you all have learned the Sandler process, so I'm very familiar with that. So that's awesome and great. Today's session, we're going to go no longer than about 90 minutes. We're going to focus on the Sandler concepts, the Sandler strategies that you've learned throughout your career, whether it's been at the boot camps or with Brad or any of the other Sandler trainers you might have worked with. So we'll be doing that. Chat, please open your chat. If there's something you want to put in there, put it in there. From time to time, I might ask you to chat something. My guess is we might do a couple breakouts here and there. But the point is participate. And the first way you can participate is to turn on your cameras, right? For those of you who especially aren't driving, please turn your cameras on so I can see those smiling faces or maybe those scowling faces, depending on, what topic we're talking about or what we're getting into. So cameras on. Again, it's not a free-for-all open forum, but I'm not real formal group. So anytime, you have a comment or something, you can raise your hand via the button. You can, pop off mute and say, hey. As long as it's appropriate and to the point, and we'll deal with it and talk about it. So those of you getting those cameras on, thanks. I appreciate it. The more that I have the cameras, the better it goes because I can see more reactions, which helps me. Okay, so just by a show of hands of those who I can see, any of you folks not familiar at all with any of the Sandler processes, raise your hand. So most of you are going to have a working knowledge of most of the things we talk about. Would that be a fair statement? Okay, head nod here and there. Okay, good. So let's sort of start with success concepts. Right now, these aren't necessarily, pure Sandler stuff. This is stuff that, we pick up along the way and we add to the content and stuff that we've always trained throughout the years. And the number one, that anyone who's been communicating with other human beings, right, from thousands of years ago, seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. That is a key concept. And that concept, when it comes to good communication, i.e. good home buying, and conversations, if the first thing that you do is seek to understand that person, you're going to be miles ahead. You're going to be miles ahead. I want to talk about some rules that apply to that concept. So everything that you've learned in Sandler should have been guided towards seeking to understand that seller, okay? The next key core success concept, and this applies to, again, these first two aren't Sandler exclusive. These apply to any process, any system, any conversation you're having with people, right? Get the truth on the table. Get the truth on the table. Be honest with people. Now, it's okay for you to be honest with people, right? That's one of our core things. The problem is getting them to be honest, right? The conversation should just be a conversation about the truth between adults, right? But it means both parties have to come to the table with the truth. I'm curious, how many of you have found it's a little difficult sometimes to get the truth out of those sellers? Yep. See some heads nodding. Absolutely. Yeah. That's still our goal and our task. And one of the best ways that we can do it is seeking to understand them. Now, most of what we teach and the concepts and strategies, we teach them pretty literally. No matter what system you're using, what tactic it is, it's usually taught pretty literally. And I want to make sure that most of you have figured this out. You may have learned something literally, but you almost never use it literally, right? Because a conversation is fluid. A conversation is improv very often, right? Which means it's not a script, right? Now we can practice with a script to get our strategy down, to get the basic tactic down, you've got to be able to have that ability to move and to adapt and what's the favorite word now, pivot as you're having that conversation, right? So keep in mind, as we talk about tactics, I won't get into a lot of tactics today, but when we talk about tactics, make sure it's a tactic that could actually come out of your lips. Engage in that tactic in a way that you can do it and still stay true to the strategy and concept behind the tactic. Sometimes I think we get so enamored with the tactic that it sort of gets away from us and moves, it gets a little skewed away from the actual seek first to understand kind of concept behind it. So keep that in mind. Most of you have realized this. I know some of you have been working with us for years and years and years. I know, gosh, Michael, gosh, I've known you how long? 20, gosh, probably 20 years. Yeah, almost 20 years, something like that. Yeah. Um, so again, I've been doing Sandler stuff for 30 years. And I can only think of one sales call where I walked out going, damn, that was perfect Sandler. Right. There's always a little lesson we can get. Right. I mean, I have a theory, as good as we are, we can always be better. We can always do a little bit better. There's always something when every sales call, when I debrief it and I go through it and I replay the game film in my head, listen and try and visualize what I did and said, there's always something I go, oh, what were you thinking? Right. So to really get good at this stuff, it is all about that ongoing incremental reinforcement. And those of you who have been working with Brad and coming back to boot camps, you've experienced that incremental aha-ness. Now I get what that means. Now that makes sense to me, right? Just based on your experience. Right? Key concept that you've learned in that Sandler methodology and system is this thing called stay behind the pendulum. Stay behind the pendulum, right? So if you're going to stay behind the pendulum, we got to figure out what pendulum theory is. So who's my advanced person who can give me a 2-3 sentence definition of pendulum theory? By the way, that I mentioned this is going to be participatory.
I can do it if no one else wants to.
I don't see any eagerness here, group. You see a couple of smiles. I see a couple of people with their eyes casting down, going, "Don't pick me, don't pick me." But all right, okay, go ahead, Michael. Give them your definition of pendulum theory.
You never get in between the prospect and where you want the prospect to go. So the pendulum theory is whatever direction they are moving to, you are behind them doing the things that are different from a traditional salesperson. That's more than 3 words, but a traditional salesperson that would be pulling them towards the sale. You're doing the exact opposite of that. You're behind them, helping them get themselves towards the end goal.
Got it. That's a pretty good summation. I like that. So let me give you guys the visual to go with it, right? So if the seller is that person there, that person with the hands out, right? That represents the seller. So the seller represents a pendulum in this example. And we know that people swing back and forth. Like they swing back and forth between being comfortable with us, not being comfortable with us, being okay with selling the place, not okay with selling the place. There's all kinds of things that are going on in their head that make them swing back and forth, right? In our little example here, anything between 6 and 3. 3 o'clock's where you've got the deal. You got it, that signed contract, everybody's happy, right? The 9 o'clock over there on the left side is negative. Nope, not going to happen. Not going to work. Not going to cooperate. Get out of my house before I call the police. Right? Negative, negative, negative. That 6 o'clock is that neutral, indifferent person. Right? And you all have those, especially on your buy calls. Now, my house isn't ugly. We don't have a tough situation. We're just curious. We got your letter and just wondered what your offer would be. Right? Well, we don't really plan on moving, but just in case. Pretty neutral there, right? So anytime anyone is between 6 and 3, they're somewhat positive. They're somewhat positive. And what do positive sellers say to you? Some either type in chat or just pop open your chat, your mute, and what do positive ones sound like? Sounds great. Okay, good. That's an easy one. We only got one chatter. Tell me more. Okay, they actually say that to you, Lamar. Tell me more. Okay, okay, good, good. That's pretty positive. They're wanting to learn more. Okay, I really like you. Okay, what's the old saying? If they compliment you, they're not selling to you. You know, there's an old rule that used to say if they're complimenting you, they're not buying because that's the payoff. That's what they're paying you is the compliment. Now, for the deal, and you say, I'm curious, why did you choose me? Because I like you. Well, it's different, right? Right. But again, if they're saying something like that, it's still positive. It's still on that positive side. How soon can we close? I really want to sell right now. Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. You guys are great. I hear great things about you. Those are all those good positive comments. So when we hear those positive comments, we know that person is somewhere, they're interested. They're somewhere in that 5 o'clock to 4 o'clock range, right? So many people, when we hear this positive stuff, we go into salesperson mode, right? That sounds like something I'd be willing to do. That's great. And let me tell you why this makes sense for you. When we go into salesy mode, we tend to jump in front of them and start sounding like a salesperson. Now, we all know that salespeople are the most trusted, valued, important profession in the world, right? That they have the most respect of any other profession. You ain't buying that, are you, group? I see those sly smiles, Brad. I see that stuff, right? Yeah. If you were to rank, you know, jobs that are held in high esteem, salespeople probably wouldn't be the top of the list, right? Because most people have that negative concept of salespeople. And think about it. When you show up at that seller's house, are they warm and fuzzy, or are they maybe a little fearful? Maybe a little playing it close to the vest, right? They don't know you and they don't trust you. So as soon as we start sounding salesy, they treat us like that, which means, right, they put that wall up. So we've got to, they're moving that direction. If we jump between where they are and where we want them to go, we sound salesy and we will either slow them down or in some cases get them moving the other direction, right? So that, like Michael said, never get between that seller and where you want them to go, which is the deal. So when they say, oh, this sounds like something I'd be willing to do, you should be saying things like, really, I'm surprised. Why would you be willing to do it? Does that change the whole conversation? When they start telling me why they would be willing to do that, why this makes sense for them, versus me trying to convince them why this should make sense. Okay, changing gears real quick. Let's go to the negative folks. Okay, the negative folks in chat or just open up your mute and shout it out. But what are some of the things you hear from the negative side of people?
You're probably just going to lowball me.
You're just going to lowball me. You're going to try and steal my house. There's no way I could do that. You guys are all alike. You're all a bunch of crooks, right? What else have you heard out there, group? I don't even know if I want to sell. I'm not sure that's negative. That's more that neutral person. Not sure I want to sell. I'm talking to a lot of investors, so don't plan on me accepting any offers today. It might be mildly negative. It's just good information to know. Okay. I've already gotten lowball offers. Okay. Okay, so I gotta tell you, group, some of those don't sound real negative to me. Just want to see I've already gotten lowball offers. I need to think about it. What's negative about I need to think about it? Nothing negative there. That tells me you've already shared everything with them. You told them what's going on. You told them your offer, and now they're thinking about it, right? If that's the response you get, we know that there's something we didn't do up front about that, which we'll talk about. I'm in no hurry.
So let's clarify the question.
Yep.
Um, some of these responses coming in feel negative to us as buyers because we're not getting the deal. So our emotional feeling is negative, but that doesn't mean we have a negative prospect. When somebody says, I'm going to think about it, I'm not sure I want to sell. I mean, those are wishy-washy, non-committal things, but that's not a negative prospect. A negative prospect is the guy who's about to throw you out the door. You've
Yep.
said or done something that offended them, or they have a predisposition against us because of an experience they had before us or expectations they have. So it's a negative, hostile. If you look at the pendulum, the 9 is it's over, get out of my house. 8 is it's hostile. And 7 is just a negative attitude. So it's not us, it's the prospect and getting into that kind of scary territory, what could be a scary territory of, oh wow, something's just this has gone off the rails.
Because most of what I've seen in the chat there is just normal stuff that people are going to say. There's real no negativity to it. The negativity comes when the guy says, "Look, just look around the house and give me the offer and get out as fast as you can." It's pretty negative. The attitude, the tonality, it's coming off as negative, right? You guys just going to steal my house, right? I've had 3 other people out here and they just give me nothing but lowball offers. Are you going to do the same damn thing? See, a lot of it has to do with their tonality, their facial expressions, and the way they're talking as to whether they're negative or not. When they say things like, "Boy, I'm not sure this is going to work," that's just great information, right? That's great information. I would say something like, I was thinking the same thing. Why were you thinking that? It's a whole different conversation. It's not negative, right? When you get that really negative, "You're going to steal my house. You guys are all the same, a bunch of thieves," right? Hey, I saw that show on HGTV or whatever, and all you're going to do is try and rip me off. When under attack, when truly under attack, fall back. Sandler concept, stay behind the pendulum. Never get between the seller and where you want them to go. And I'm sort of I'm spending a lot of time on these concepts, right? Because they apply so well. That seek first, understand, and do it in such a way that you stay behind the pendulum, that you don't get in your own way. So when they're that negative folks, you don't need to justify and defend. You just need to acknowledge the truth. Sounds like you're pretty upset. Should I just leave? Now, in Sandler speak, Sandler calls that stripping line, right? Who knows the stripping line story, why it's called stripping line? Anybody know that story?
Hey, this is Tyler. I'm not on
Go ahead,
video,
Tyler.
but
Let's
I
let's
could
hear it.
share. So I think the analogy is a fisherman who's fighting a hooked fish, and you pull too hard against it, you risk ripping the hook right out of the fish's mouth and losing your catch. And so instead, you kind of work with the fish when they're fighting, and you kind of go towards them and strip line and give them more room to run and kind of stay with them. And eventually, I guess in the fish analogy, they tire out and and you'll be able to better set the hook and do what you need to later. So don't fight it now.
That's pretty close. Pretty close. Now, I was like I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years older. And I got a little fishing pole for my birthday, and I got my worms. I was up there fishing in this little pond called Mary's Pond. And I'm putting my worms on the hook, and as soon as that bob would move, I'd yank it. And of course, no fish. Kid across the little older than me said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Fishing." He goes, "No, you're not." I go, "Yes, I am." He goes, "Well, you haven't caught anything." So my dad said the first time the bobber moves, it's just the fish coming in to check out the bait. He said, "Don't do anything." Okay. So sure enough, I throw it in, it moves. I don't do anything. It moves again, and I yank. And this time, now I don't have a worm coming back with me. He looks across. He says, "Hey, second time it moves." He says, "It's just the fish grabbing the bait, the worm. You got to let your fishing line out so it can take the food and let it go a little bit, and then you just give a little tug and you'll hook the fish." Right? So stripping line means letting out the fishing line, letting them go, letting them run. Sounds like you're really upset with me, right? What's going on? Should I leave? Strip the line. Should I leave? So that's my so you guys who don't know me, that's my little stripping line sounds. Strip some line, right? Let it out. Let them run. Let them run. It's much easier to catch it. So I see that Sean had a question of what's a good line. You've got that negative prospect. Sounds like you're upset. Should I just leave? Sounds like you're really upset with me for some reason. Have I offended you? Sounds like you don't really want to do this. Why did you invite me out? See, notice you don't hear me justifying and defending. Concept. Sandler's basic concept that he explained through pendulum theory was don't look like, act like, and sound like those traditionally trained salespeople. Always be closing, right? In fact, the Sandler rule is never close, let them close themselves. Okay, let them close themselves. Okay, and you do that by never getting between the prospect and where you want them to go. And he called that pendulum theory. So every strategy, every tactic is going to have these two key concepts in mind, right? Seek to understand the seller first, but have the conversation in such a way that you never get between them and where you want them to go. Stay behind the pendulum. And you do that with truth, getting truth on the table. If I got a negative prospect, truth is they look upset and sound upset. So truth out of my lips is you look upset, right? And then I'm going to, should I leave? Right? And it changes the whole conversation. It changes it in a heartbeat. And most of you who've used this have found that to be true. Those of you who have been able to stay behind the pendulum and do some stripping line, doesn't it change the conversation? Looking for a couple
It,
head
it
nods.
it does, and it's hard to do. There's the nature or natural response to somebody's happy and excited to, oh, let's go, let me come with you, let's get you there faster.
Yep.
Right, so it's just natural, and the opposite is true when somebody's upset, to say, oh no, but you don't understand, and we start to defend and argue.
Yep.
And it really takes a lot of self-awareness and being out of the house buying mode and into the what's happening with this person, seek first to understand what's happening with this person mode. And it's subtle, but it's a huge difference in the bonding and rapport and the ability for us to continue and engage and do creative things like options and stuff at the end, that they trust us enough to do business with us with us instead of somebody else.
Here's
So it's
one key
subtle,
thing.
but it's huge.
One key thing though, and Michael, I'm sure you'll agree, you can't be emotionally involved. You can't let that push your button.
Yeah.
They're coming on negative. When they're coming on positive, excitement button goes up, which means you're emotional, or they're negative and they push that button where you want to judge. You've got to be emotionally objective. You have to have a mindset, right? I'm independently wealthy, don't particularly need this deal. Because if you get emotionally involved, then they will hook you on that negative stuff. You will justify and defend, or they'll hook you on the positive stuff. Then you'll get way too excited way too soon, right? So sort of keep that in mind. Now, most of us have at some point or another, right? We've been out there and we've gone and bought things and we're greeted by the enthusiastic salesperson who says, "May I help you?" And what do you say? What do you say,
I'm
group?
just looking. Just
No,
looking.
I'm just looking. No, thanks, just looking. No, thanks, just looking. Haven't we all done that? Yep. Yep, we've all done it. And why do we do it? Because we don't want that trained killer to put us in a corner. So the standard operating system for a seller is to be on the defensive, to protect themselves, not to commit to anything. So they're going to be just curious, right? They're just curious. They're wanting to seek as much information. Step two, they want to get as much information from you and give you nothing in return, right? So they mislead us, play it close to the vest, right? Got it? And they want to gather as much information as they can. And then they want to keep us, well, they give us hope, right? This looks really good. Call me next week. I'll let you know what we're going to do, right? You guys never get ghosted like that, do you? Maybe once, maybe twice, but yeah, it's about all that. It happens every day, doesn't it? Now we find ourselves in chase mode because why? Step number 4 is they hide. They never call you back. So they mislead us, right? They turn us into unpaid consultants. They give us hope and then they hide. Anybody ever have that happen to them in the last week? Yeah, that's our fault, group. That's our fault. Okay, and I can't blame them because that we're all wired this way. This is what we all tend to do when we're talking to salespeople. I've done it, and I would challenge anybody on the call who says they've never done that to a salesperson. Basically, we do. It's just that's how we're wired, right? So when you learn the Sandler system, wherever you learned it, you should have learned the 7 key steps. So I'm just going to review them briefly with you, right? Any selling system, I don't care if it's Sandler, I don't care if it's Brian Tracy, I don't care who it is, right? They're always going to have a bonding and rapport section, right? Where you work to make people comfortable with you. Well,
Hey,
you
Dave,
guys, yes.
can you briefly describe the difference between personal bonding and rapport or personal rapport and professional business rapport? Did I lose you?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear. When you say personal, where we're not in business mode, there's no business on the line. It's just buddy to buddy, friend to friend, new person to new person. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and it may not have been from you, but when I was working with Max, we talked a lot about, or he talked a lot about the difference between a personal rapport, which is yeah, buddy buddy, hey, we're friends rapport, and a business professional rapport. But if I'm getting off the rails, I'll let you do your thing. So
Well, yeah,
go
it
ahead.
is a little off the rails, but I think it's important to talk about. I mean, when we establish bonding and rapport, we are talking about that bonding and rapport in that sales environment where you are attempting to get that seller to sell you the house at a discount. How can we get them to trust us to do that? Right? And in professional sales, right? Don't ever think they're your buddies. Right? That especially applies to some of these folks that have long-term sales and they see the same people over and over again, right? Always make sure there's that distinction. If there's business with someone, it's business. And there's never a timeout. There's never a timeout, right? With friends, buddies, right? You got great rapport with them. You can go off the rails sometime, they're still going to love you, right? But in business, that bonding and rapport, whenever you are ear to ear with them or eyeball to eyeball with them, you're on. that make sense, Michael? I'm not sure that's what he was looking for.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time today on upfront contracts, but I gave you a quick version of an upfront contract today when I let you sort of know what the agenda was and what we're going to be talking about today and how much time we're going to have. I know that Ryan spends quite a bit of time, working on upfront contracts with you, but the key thing I want to say about upfront contracts, great selling should be nothing but a series of mutual agreements between adults as a result of having that honest conversation between adults, right? So mutual agreements is the key phrase there for a good upfront contract. People don't get mad at you when you let them know what you're going to do to them and they agree to it. If you just surprise them out of the blue, it's a shock to their system. The natural thing is to recoil. Whoa, wait a minute. I didn't see that coming. If you tell them up front what the process is, you tell them up front what's going to happen at the meeting, what you hope the outcomes to be. When you get them to agree that if it doesn't make sense, they'll tell you, right? That is a huge difference maker. And I've said this for 30 plus years, if you can just get good at the concept of mutual agreements up front so that there's no surprises, it's a huge, huge differentiator.
And I
It
think
makes
the
a
key
huge
also
difference.
is you said mutual agreements with an S. The upfront contract isn't the A ton or the A naught that we do upfront one time at the beginning of a buy appointment, and then we check the box. The upfront contract happens many times throughout the engagement. We have a clear future at the end of the engagement, which also establishes a new upfront contract for the next engagement, or throughout our appointment as we go through the old submarine, right? There are upfront contracts throughout. It's a contracts, not a singular upfront contract that's done once.
And it's mutual agreements. And if you don't like the word contract, right, upfront agreement, to differentiate a contract, a written contract versus an oral contract, verbal contract. It's where we're letting them know what's going to happen, where they're telling us as best they can, right, what they want to have happen, and then we're getting both agreements on the outcomes. And I'll say this about the outcomes and a mutual agreement. At the beginning and end of every meeting that you're having for the purpose of buying their house, you should always give them a choice. You want to bond and rapport with people, allow them to feel in control. Give them a choice, right? Give them a choice. Because they always have the choice to say no, get out of my house, right? But make sure you know that they know that, and make sure they know that you have a choice to not buy their house. That is straightening some backbones, right? Okay. So if, like I say, if you get nothing else out of get mutual agreements, because you're making them all along the way. You're making them throughout the conversation. You're making them at the end, wrapping up the conversations, making sure you're crystal clear about what's going to happen next. And that's where you get in trouble and start chasing people, because we didn't have a clear upfront agreement about what was going to happen next and who was going to do what. Okay. So again, motivation. I'm going to spend some time talking about motivation today because I think it's absolutely critical and important. Right? What's motivating them to sell their house at a discount? I mean, that's absolutely critical. And you have to know how to have that conversation. And that conversation is 99% of you asking questions. Of whatever's coming out of your mouth is 99% asking questions. But it's also 70% listening to their answers. Right? You can't just ask a question and not listen to the answers, because their answers should predicate what your next question is going to be. We'll talk more about that. Excuse me. Financial expectations. That's the tough one for them to be honest, isn't it? What do they want to put in their pocket? How much do they want for their house? They never give you pushback on that, do they? I said tongue in cheek, right? Don't they always give you pushback there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much, yes. Yeah. And then, of course, decision-making process. How are they going to decide? How are they going to decide? Who's going to be involved? When do they want to have it completed? When do they want to be out of the house? When do they want to have it all behind them? Right? And then once you've got them qualified in steps 3, 4, and 5 in Sandler, here's the Sandler methodology that differentiates their process from so many other sales processes. I could take these 7 steps and virtually 80% of the sales processes out there have a version of these steps. The difference in what you learned in Sandler is the methodology, which means this: steps 3, 4, and 5 are your qualifiers. But if I'm seeking to qualify you, then I'm in front of the pendulum. This is critical. The best way you can qualify someone is do everything you can to disqualify them. Sounds counterintuitive, but it's magic. But it's magic. Maybe it's just me, Melissa, but I'm not seeing any reason you should be selling this house at a discount. What am I missing? Doesn't that change the conversation? Yeah. And they say, well, I don't think I need to. You probably should then. When you call a real estate agent to list it, what they tell you. How many of you asked the question, right? Have you called a real estate agent? How many of you asked that question? Hands up. Yeah, that should be one of the first disqualifying questions out of your lips. When you call a real estate agent, what'd they tell you? And that's called an assumptive question, by the way, from an actual tactic, right? Assume they did what they should have done. Because vast majority of people selling their house do what? They call a real estate agent. So why didn't they do that? So that's a great starter right there for motivation. But when you can get through steps 3, 4, and 5, and they can tell you why they're motivated, they can tell you their financial expectations and what that decision-making process is, you got a pretty darn good prospect there, don't you, to get that house. Yep. And then it's just a matter of going back now and doing your upfront contract for what's going to happen when you give them the offer. Right? Remember when Michael said those upfront contracts, those mutual agreements are happening all the time, right? So what's going to happen once you present that offer? And they shouldn't be surprised. Why? Because if you did a good financial expectation step, they have a pretty good idea that you're going to be pretty low, that you're not just minus, real estate commission. Right? Doesn't mean I gave them an offer back in financial expectations. It's just where we manage their expectations down. Okay. And then, of course, you got to make your offer. You got to make your offer. And then once you make the offer, post-sale. Now, in your world, this post-sale has become a little different because you guys now have that 3-day right of rescission in there, right? Which is a great advantage. Because your competition doesn't. Okay. And so I spent a lot of time with a group that I work with talking about that right of rescission and how it's helped them get business. Right. So again, your post sale, pretty easy peasy. Now that you've got a house under contract, what's going to happen? Shouldn't be any surprises. What you're going to need to do, what they're going to need to do, all that kind of stuff. So in a nutshell, that's basically the 7 steps that you go through. The difference with what you learned in Sandler is in the methodology of how you have that conversation within those 7 steps. Okay, so that you don't look like, act like, and sound like that traditionally always be closing salesperson. Fair? Okay. So how many of you, even though you've spent some time with Brad or you've spent some time in the boot camps, how many of you still catch yourself sounding like a needy, greedy salesperson? Thank you for being honest up there, Nick, Ron. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because we have to feed our family too, don't we? Right? So again, the more you practice this, the more you reinforce it, and you guys have a great team. I mean, between Ryan and Michael as leaders and some and Ron and some of the folks I know, you guys have a great team to work together to practice this stuff, to just make it just your second nature. Right. And that's awesome. So a couple key rules I want to talk about. Not all systems have these rules. You guys again have Sandler, so you've got some pretty good ones here, which I love. The first rule I want to talk about is go for the no early and often. Go for the no early and often. What am I doing? What concept am I sticking to if I'm going for the no early and often? What is it, group? What concept?
Giving them the sense that they're in control of the conversation.
Yep, good, good, good. Am I in front of the pendulum or behind the pendulum?
Staying behind the pendulum.
Behind the pendulum, right? Alexandra, honesty on the table, absolutely. Go for the no. If I'm going for the no, why would you want to sell your house at a discount? This looks like a great property. It's going for the no, group. When you do your upfront contracts and you say things like, this doesn't make sense, will you tell me no? You're going for the no. Why haven't you called a real estate agent? You could probably list it and make more money. You're going for the no. Go for the no early and often. When you do that, you don't sound like a needy, greedy, obnoxious salesperson who's wanting to steal their house. So anybody have a story of going for the no and the conversation that turned positive from that? Participation. Share. I told you I was begging for a story. You guys wouldn't, you wouldn't, no one would rescue me. Help me out here.
So, Dave, I don't know if this is a story, but I picture and put myself in the seller's shoes, and they're behind that door, and you knock on it, and they are just thinking that maybe we drive the fancy car, we're the salesperson, we have a briefcase full of cash, and we're just there to take advantage of them. And so they have their guard up the whole time. And when you're not that salesperson and you're honest with them and you let them know, hey, we're not the right fit, and you go for the no, and you kind of close up your briefcase, close up your notebook, and the appointment's over, that's when the appointment actually starts. And it really gets their guard down, and you can have that honest conversation when you can go for the no as early as possible.
It's amazing how you do that. I'll take a foreclosure. Right? Someone calls you out, they're getting foreclosed on. What's the obvious question there? What's the obvious go for the no question there, group? Why not just let the bank take it? You guys understand? Do you hear how that is going for the no? Now, I want to add something else here. I don't have this on the slide, but it's got
Alex has another story.
Pardon?
I said Alex said she's got a story also.
Okay. She said she. Oh, you have
Sorry, I
no
got a
story.
little
I looked real quick and I thought that said I have no story. Okay, so you've got one. Okay, got it.
I've got a lot of background noise, so I'm gonna stay off camera and off this down. But yeah, we had a seller who I just went through this with, and the husband and wife, they were like, oh, this is the bottom dollar that we want. And just right away it was like, well, I don't think we're gonna be anywhere close to that. Is that, and the guy was like, well, that's okay. Where do you think he would be? Where, and I was like, really far, like, it's not going to be anywhere close to what you're needing. Like, would you want some realtor referrals? Like, what are you thinking? And then it ended up that we were able to get under contract just from telling him it's not going to work out and let him come to us.
And as soon as she did that, she no longer became that person going to come in and steal the house. right? I mean, she got rid of that mindset that they have, that you're there just to take advantage of them. So that go for the no, NO is critical. Now I'm going to add a new one here. I learned this from a client, gosh, 15 years ago. Go for the KNOW early and often. What do we mean by that? Go for the KNOW early and often. Those two go for the no's. Funnel right in to seek first to understand. If I'm going for the KNOW, I'm seeking to understand. If I'm going for the NO, I'm behind the pendulum. Got it? So keep that in mind. Go for the KNOW and go for the NO. Go for the no. And you'll be miles ahead. Okay? Miles ahead. Next rule I want to talk about. Okay? Sell today, educate tomorrow. Sell today, educate tomorrow. You know, as a rule, so many salespeople, they were taught, right? And I always tell this story, but my very first sales manager taught me to anticipate every possible question that someone could ask me. And in my pitch, make sure I answered it before they could ask it. So what did he teach me to do? Educate, 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 educate. Right? If you're busy educating, you're not selling. Why? Because number one, you're doing most of the talking. And if you're talking, you're not selling. The only way you can understand someone to find out what they really need and want is to listen, is to seek to understand them. Okay? So if you want to sell today, right, understand, do everything you can to understand their situation first, before, right, before you seek to be understood, which is, again, that's another, sell today, educate tomorrow is another way of saying seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. Okay. Another rule that ties right into this one is don't spill your candy in the lobby. Got it? Don't spill your candy in the lobby. Now, those of you who have been with Sandler for a while, you have heard this over and over and over again, right? You walk in, you show up and throw up. Let me tell you about home investors. And you beat your chest, you give them all the stuff, you tell them how wonderful you are, you tell them all the reasons that why you guys are great, why you're America's #1 home buyer, and you're busy spilling all your candy and wasting their time. And it ties right into the sell today, educate tomorrow, and seek first to understand. If I'm busy answering every question that they could possibly ask before they could ask it, I'm spilling my candy in the lobby, right? I'm spilling my candy in the lobby. And again, it was such an impactful event in my sales career. I'll never forget when I remember his name, Bernie Kenner, right? I'm in the middle of spilling my candy, educating them about everything before they could ask it, and he calls a timeout. And he says, did someone teach you this crap? I said, yeah. He goes, you just wasted 7 minutes of my life. Can you do this and that? I said, yeah. He goes, write it up. I'll go get my checkbook. Right? That was my aha on seek first to understand what's important to them, which, by the way, is built in to your upfront contract of what they want to make sure they cover at this meeting, right? On that phone call. Now, again, so think about it. Sell today, educate tomorrow. Don't spill your candy in the lobby. We got several rules here about making sure you seek to understand. We've got one more important one here. And many of you may have heard of it, may have seen it, talked about it. Don't paint seagulls in the seller's picture. And those of you who aren't familiar with Sandler, There's an urban myth in the Sandler world, okay? And it goes about Nancy and the seagull. Little Nancy was in primary school out in California. By the way, there's a 1964 California Supreme Court case where this urban myth came from, right? For those of you who want to do that research. Right? So little Nancy was in art class in elementary school, right? And where the art teachers, that's when they had money for art teachers to come in. And she was a very good little artist. She was very, very talented. And they were doing seascapes. And little Nancy puts a seascape, obviously much better than my graphic representation here. And the art teacher comes by and says to little Nancy, Nancy, that is good. That is really good. However, your picture needs a little balance. And she puts one of those little seagulls in the sky. And little Nancy goes crazy, ballistic, upset. Well, the teachers get her settled down, get her on the bus. Back in the early 60s, she gets off the bus. Mom's home, right? Looks in the book bag. Oh, Nancy, lovely picture. I love the seagull. Little Nancy starts screaming and crying again. Gets her settled down. Dad gets home. What's Dad see in the refrigerator? Nancy, nice picture. I love the bird, right? Again, they sued the California, everyone in the California education system they could because of the emotional distress that art teacher inflicted on little Nancy. Okay? So finally, it makes it to the Supreme Court of California. And one of the justices says, I'm confused. Says, and by the way, the first one to address Nancy. Nancy, why did it upset you so much to have the art teacher put the seagull in your picture? And without hesitation, little Nancy said, because it was my picture and I didn't see it there. Group, when you are on a by call, by appointment, whose picture is it? I'm waiting for some auditory stimulation here, or there you go.
The prospect's picture.
Got it. It's the prospect's picture. It's that seller's picture. Quit putting your seagulls in it. It's the same thing as spilling your candy. You spill everything, but all they wanted was a Werther's, right? Right? And you were busy going through chocolates and going through Skittles and going through everything else. Same thing with seagulls. It's their picture. Let them paint their picture and tell you what they want in their picture. Right? So I've spent a lot of time on this because if you really get these two concepts, seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. Get behind the pendulum, right? Seek first to understand, have the conversation truthfully in such a way that you stay behind the pendulum. When
So
you can
Dave,
get ingrained in your head, guarantee you the tactics come easy. Is that you, Nick? Go ahead.
no, it was Michael, unless Nick had a
Okay,
question too. So when we talk about assumptions, does that fall in line with painting seagulls? So I have lots of reviews with franchisees, the buy call reviews where they make assumptions or it's obvious to them about something. And I say, well, when you asked the seller this question, what did they say? Well, I didn't ask that, or it was clear that I didn't need to ask because it was already there. To me, that's a form of painting seagulls. Anytime we make an assumption, if the seller has not expressed the thing, it doesn't exist. Even though it's obvious to us, we see it, we don't need to talk about it because clearly the house is falling down. So I don't even need to ask them or have them tell me that. Well, if they don't express it in their mind, that house is not falling down until they express it. So is that a form of painting seagulls or is that a different Sandler rule?
Well, I think it's going to fall under the no mind reading.
Okay, good point.
No mind reading. And it falls under this, and this is a Sandler rule. If you think it or feel it, ask it gently. Don't assume. Right? Never, I mean, that's any selling system out there will teach you to never assume anything. The old, ASS, you and me, makes an ass of you and me when you spell assume, right? Never assume anything, right? It's not about you and what you think is true. Confirm everything that you think. Based on what you're telling me, I think this is what you mean. Oh no, you're way off base. right? You just learned some information, didn't you? Yeah. So absolutely, painting seagulls is talking about things they don't want to talk about, right? Or don't need to talk about. Now it's not painting seagulls when you bring up things they should be talking about. Okay? They should be talking about it, right? So like, fast closing, right? If I go beat my chest, we close fast, we buy as is, we pay cash, chest beat, seagull, seagull, seagull. But for whatever reason, they haven't mentioned that they need to close fast because that's pretty critical in most of the reasons that they have to want to close fast. I can ask it. You haven't mentioned about when you want to close yet. Sounds like maybe that's not important to you. In other words, I'm asking, is that a seagull you want in your picture to close fast? If they say no, that should be a red flag for you. Okay, then it sounds like you have time to go ahead and list it with a real estate agent. Well, not really. Well, why not? Well, I have to make all got it. Now we know, now we're getting to the real issue of what's really important to them. Okay, they don't want to make the repairs. So again, those rules, go for the no early and often, go for the KNOW early and often, right? Okay. Let me just back them up for you. So seek applies to seek first understand. Don't paint seagulls in their picture, right? Don't spill your candy in the lobby. Those are a couple key critical rules, right? And I love the way the Sandler system, has expressed them. I mean, I've heard them in other systems similar, but I like the way that Sandler verbalized them because it makes so much sense. Now, once you've done all this, I want to touch on, I mentioned I was going to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about motivation today. Okay. Motivation. Okay. Not your motivation. I want to talk about their motivation. So let's take a moment and say, okay, motivation. What motivates people, group? What motivates anybody to do anything? Anybody have any?
A reward.
Yes. Louder.
A reward.
Reward. Okay.
Their
They
desired
want something.
outcome. Yeah.
They want to get something. What was that? Mr. Yeager?
Their desired outcome. Like their goal,
Okay,
the money,
what's
the
their
next
motivation?
house. Yeah.
What's their motivation for the outcome? That's the question.
Yep.
You see, relief of pain. Okay, positive or negative outcomes. Okay, think about it. What motivates you? I can ask you enough questions regarding any decision you've made in your life. It's going to come down to one of two things. You made that decision so that you're going to be comfortable, or you made that decision so that you won't be uncomfortable. Those are going to be your two driving forces in anything, right? Now, they're called all kinds of different things, right? For home investors, in the new home investor model as of last summer, we took out a couple words that rhymed, right? And we're now using some easier words, if you will. But in home investor speak, discomfort now. Psychology books will call it pain. They'll call it all kinds of other things, but in home investors, we're calling it discomfort. That's the strongest. If I am uncomfortable now, that's the strongest motivator for me to do anything, to relieve myself of that burden, of that discomfort. The next strongest would be discomfort in the future. If I have fear, if I'm afraid, right, that's motivating. If I'm afraid I'm going to lose all my equity and not get anything if the bank takes it over, right? Yeah, it's not the fact that they're foreclosing on my house. I want to be uncomfortable because I'm not going to have a home. I just don't want to lose all my equity, right? Comfort now. Who can give me an example of a reason to sell at a discount so that they can be comfortable now? needing to move ASAP. Okay. Now, group, I just did something to you there. I'm either going to teach it to you or do it to you. Whenever you ask a question, shut up. Give people a chance to answer. Okay. No matter how uncomfortable that silence was, right? Each one of you, it took time for you to process some kind of answer in your head. Being a high red, yellow that I am, right? When I ask when someone asks me a question, I can respond pretty quickly, whether it's the right answer or not. Right? Because why? That's how I was taught. That was my mindset. It's very hard for us to live in the silence. But that's where power comes from. Ask a question and shut up. Give them a chance to answer. So now we got the needle moving here on the chat. They need to move back home with family. Movers are scheduled, and I can't wait. I'm excited to get where I want to go. A divorce situation is comfort now. Trust me, I've been through a few divorce situations. I've never been comfortable. Right? Okay. Inherited property they don't want to think about anymore. Is that discomfort or comfort? If I don't want to think about it anymore, right, it's because I'm usually uncomfortable, right? Now, if I have inherited property and I'm all excited about getting the money now, right, that could be comfort now. My boy, if I can get that house sold and get my money now, I can get my debts paid off. Yeah, I'm excited about that. That would be comfort now. What about comfort in the future? Anybody think of anything for comfort in the future? What do you got going on there? I always have trouble with this one, with this group. Why would someone who's looking to be comfortable in the future want to sell at a discount now?
Maybe they're buying another house.
Yep. Yep. I'm going to add one more thing. They are excited about making sure that they get down to Florida before November so that they can now be with the grandkids and avoid winter. So the avoid winter would be discomfort in the future, and getting with the grandkids would be comfort in the future. Got it? The point we're making is, what's their reason? And it's going to boil down to one of these. Now, the most basic motivation, right, whatever it is, we now are calling it in-home investors, right? We're now calling it, what's their compelling motivational driver to do business? And it's got to be emotional. Compelling motivational driver to do business. Okay, so here I'm going to break you guys out into a breakout room. Okay, I'm going to break into breakout rooms. Please participate. Okay, you should have about 5 of you per room. Okay, and here's what I want to do. I want you to come up with the top 5 to 10 problems that people come to you to sell their house at a discount. You understand what we're asking for there? What are the top 5 to 10 reasons why they come to you to sell the house at a discount? And let me find my breakout rooms, okay? And so you're each going to get a breakout room. And once you get to it, come up with it as fast as you can. You're only going to have about 5 minutes, okay? So click out and go. Welcome back. So how'd you guys do in the breakout rooms?
Great.
Everybody participate?
Yep, it was good.
Good. We'll give the other folks another few seconds to come back. It kicks them out automatically after 60 seconds. So welcome back. Keep those cameras on. Thank you. Appreciate the smiling faces.
Dude, you gave me a dream team, man. That was a good group.
That was all arbitrary, man.
We had a power team.
All right. All right.
This
Okay,
meeting is being recorded.
So who had the power team? Who said they had the power team? Okay, Melissa, tell us what kind of issues they bring to you to take care of. What'd you guys come up with?
Inherited properties, distressed, not having any money to fix up the property, foreclosure, bad renters, divorce, maybe somebody who's moving out of state needs to sell quickly. Right, the rental, having your equity, in advance to buy another property, selling before the market changes, death, moving into an assisted living, maybe somebody's aging out. Change of use of the property, maybe it was used as a business and now they no longer need that or the business is gone. And then the final was that they just don't want to use a realtor, that maybe they don't want anybody coming through their property.
That group, did that group, that power group leave anything out? Is there anything left?
Maybe a hoarding situation.
Hoarding, bad neighborhood,
Downsizing.
downsizing, jail.
Ooh,
Right. Okay, so here's the one Sandler rule that I think is critical as people start sharing with you why they're calling and considering selling it. The problem they tell you is never the real problem. The problem they tell you is never the real problem. It usually takes this puzzle. They'll bring you a problem. And if you go just jumping after the problem, you might be working on the wrong thing, right? Let's take an inherited property. Well, I've inherited the property and don't want it. And you think, okay, great, I got paid, they don't want the inherited property. Well, what are the reasons? Why don't they want the inherited property? There's got to be a reason. When you start delving into the reasons that that's a problem for them, you will typically uncover the real issue, the real problem, right? So I don't want the inherited property. Well, that's interesting. Can you share with me why not? Well, I'm over there every weekend, every one of my weekends in the summer. I'm just over there, and I'm you know, and I'm not able to do the things I normally do on my weekends. So what's the problem? It's not the property. What are you
Time.
really helping that person do?
Freeing up their time.
Get out of their discomfort.
Doing what they would rather be doing on the weekends with family, right? As opposed to having to take care of this dang old place, right? That's a different conversation. But what's the impact? How's that really impacting them? So when you say you're missing on the weekends, I mean, what does that mean? Oh, I'm missing my kids' little league games. I'm missing I'm missing the college football games. I'm missing whatever it is. What's the impact on their life? Another thing in your world, what is the impact on the seller if they do nothing? If they just keep doing what they've been doing? What's the impact? What's the impact on them if they can get rid of it? How's that going to affect them? Right? So you make sure to really have a compelling motivational driver. You've got to have a problem or an issue. You've got to understand the reasons why it's a problem or issue and the impact it has on them, right? And here's what glues it together. How do they feel about that? Okay, the emotional driver is the glue that keeps that puzzle together. And if you're not really having that conversation and putting that puzzle together and sticking it together with the emotional glue, you don't really have their compelling emotional motivational driver. You've just got some issues out there, right? It takes all three of those to equal their motivation. Make sense? How many of you settle for less than the whole puzzle? Yeah, yeah. And again, most of us do that. When you're first learning this stuff, you'll hear a problem, you think that's it. Okay, then you overdo it. Right? Then you overdo it, right? Sometimes you don't even recognize it when you hear it, and you'll blow right past it. It just takes a practice and an ear for getting those pieces together and how you're going to do it. So let's talk about the Sandler tool, right? And I love the tool that they've put together for this, for you guys, right? It's that funnel. If I were to randomly pick one of you that I can see, or those of you who don't have your cameras on, you're still not immune. I can still see that you're with us. If I were to ask you to tell me the different the questions, right? Those 8 questions in the funnel, how many of you could do it without even blinking? Without even looking at the slide, right? Without even looking at the slide. How many of you could just tell me more about it? Could you be more specific? Give me an example. How long it's been an issue? What you done to fix it? Why you think that didn't work? How much that costing you? How does that make you feel? Have you given up? If you can't do it, if you do not know those questions, you're gonna have a hard time in that motivation step because you won't be complete. You won't really have that compelling emotional driver. Now, I want you to memorize it, just like it is right there. So anytime I see you, I could say, give me the funnel. You can just look at me and go, tell me more about it, because give me more specific, give me an example, how long's been a problem, what you done to fix it, why you think that didn't work, right? How much that costing you? How does that make you feel? Have you given up? Once your brain knows those questions, your brain's a magnificent tool. It's now looking for those answers. It's listening for those answers. And it will help you if you don't hear those answers, right? You could say, well, what's going on? That's another way of saying, tell me more, right? And they tell you everything and you get all the answers. Check, 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 check. Yep, got them. And all you asked was one question. Other times, you're going to say, tell me more about it. And you're going to have to ask each and every one of these questions in a way that's appropriate to the situation that you're in, plus about 5 or 6 or 7 other questions. Because that's the nature of the way that person was communicating, right? So getting the answers to these questions is the important thing about this funnel. It's not the literal question itself, right? It's not the literal question itself, right? That's just a starter to get your brain wired so it knows the answers it's listening and looking for. I mean, I look, what have you tried to do about that? Now, group, in your world, I'm going to go back to the assumptive question about real estate agents. What do most people selling their house do? What's the first thing they do? First thing they try is to call a real estate agent. So guess what I would coach you to say at whatever issue they give me? I'm going to say, so when you called a real estate agent, what'd they tell you? And then listen to what they say. Listen to what they say. When it comes to, obviously it didn't work or they wouldn't be talking to you. So, I mean, I'm trying to find out why it didn't work, what happened to keep it from working, right? And did that work? Well, obviously it didn't, right? So what happened? Right? All kinds of ways I'm going to figure out why it didn't work. Right? Now, when it comes to how much does that cost you? What you're looking for there is the impact. That's the impact, because here's what happens. You take that problem or that issue, you put it in the funnel, right? As you start, whoops, I went backwards, didn't mean to do that. Lost my cursor. As you start going through the funnel, right? You put the issue in, you come up with the reasons. Tell me more what's going on. Could you be specific? And they're telling you all that stuff of why the real estate agent, why it won't work, why this, why that. That's all the reasons, right? But you've got to get to the impact. That's the what's it cost you question. How does that impact them if they do nothing? How's that impact them if they do something, right? It's not a matter of literal, what's that going to cost you? It could be some money. Well, how much more would that cost you if you had to stay here another 6 months? Could be. Oh, really? So how much would you need to move to Georgia? Right? Those are impact questions, group. Right? You got to get them. Right? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? What am I really looking for there, group?
No
Compelling
emotion.
motivation.
Got it? Got it? Is there emotional glue to connect it? Right now, do I have to ask that? Most of the time, not. Why would I not have to ask it? I'm gonna pick on you, Ron, because I know you'll bail me out. Why would I not have to ask it?
Dave, I'm gonna be honest with you. I zoned out for 2 seconds here.
Oh, I love it. All right. That's a free pass. You're allowed to zone out, right? Okay, so Nick, what do you think?
Why you don't have to ask the reason for their
Why do
emotion.
I not have to ask how do you feel about
um they told you.
it? But yes, they could have told you. Okay, Ron's back in the game. Okay, bail him out, Ron.
I'll tag him
Well,
Ron.
they called us there for a reason. We know they're in some kind of discomfort already. So us asking them how do you feel about it is kind of redundant.
Well, but you have to confirm how they're feeling about it. You
How do
see,
you think-
how are they feeling about that issue and the reasons and the impact? When people get emotionally involved, you see it in their face, you see it in their body, you hear it in their voice. All you have to do is confirm what you're hearing and seeing. Looks like you don't care
Instead
much
of
about
asking, instead of asking, how do you feel about that? If you see it or feel it, ask it gently.
There you
I'm
go.
getting this sense that this is a challenge. I'm getting the sense you're worried about that. I'm getting the sense that, help me understand what you're going through. Any of those kinds of things is a different way to ask without saying, hey, how do you feel about that? If
Sure
they're,
looks
if
like
they're,
you're upset about this, Michael. Am I reading this right?
Yeah.
You bet your ass I am, right?
I like
To the
that
point
approach better.
where you're actually going to make a change? And that's the last question there. Is it to the point where they're actually going to do something?
and you could go so far to say, it probably doesn't bother you enough to do anything about that, right? I mean, again, behind the pendulum is, hey, yeah, okay, you've got a problem, but it's probably not a big enough problem. You can still even get behind that and have them tell you big problem.
Oh,
I mean, hey, if I don't do this, I'm gonna get a divorce. Probably not a big enough problem. Yeah, I don't like her anyway.
oh, hang on. Is that good or bad?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Again, group, you stay behind the pendulum. When you say, I mean, I've had I said, well, I get the feeling it's not that big a deal for you, that this isn't really that important. Because I'm not seeing any emotional, it's a high C kind of person. They're real, closed off and, well, yeah, it's very important to me. But they had to say that because I couldn't see it. So I'm assuming that they're not upset about it, right? Got it. But what the key things here is you've got a process and a system. You use it. This is a tool for you to use in that motivation compartment. Because if there is no discomfort, if there is no compelling emotional driver, they're not going to sell you the house. It's that simple. And if any house you've ever bought, I guarantee you they had an emotional driver, whether you knew it or not, or they wouldn't have sold it to you. So the more you can understand what their emotional driver is, compelling emotional driver, the easier it's going to be for you. Problem is, we have a lot of people out there calling us who aren't really our target, who aren't really our sellers, right? Which means, they're not really that interested, or they're more likely to be able to list it. Those folks really aren't your target. So get rid of those folks as fast as you can. And if you're going through, why are you selling, why are you doing this? It doesn't sound to me like you have any reason to sell it to a guy like me at a discount. What am I missing? You're behind the pendulum and you're going for the no. It's amazing how that works. I want to take a little bit of time. Oh, we kind of are running out of time here, group. Can we go just a little bit longer? I know I said about 90 minutes. We're about 90 minutes. Can I go just a few minutes longer? You guys okay with that? I understand if some of you have to run. I get that. Okay. Okay, here's an exercise I want you to do. Okay. Number one, just write this down somewhere. Number one, inherited property. Number two, divorce. Number three, foreclosure. Okay. Number four, bad tenant. And number five, the free one that you can fill in on your own. Here's what I want you to do. Come up with 3 reasons. I'm not going to do it now, but I want you to come up with 3 reasons why an inherited property would cause an issue to have them to sell at a discount. Again, why a foreclosure would, why a divorce would. Foreclosure, give you an example. Well, I don't want to lose all my equity. I don't want to ruin my credit. I don't want my friends and family to find out. See, those now become the reasons and the real issues. And you can now use this multiple choice of reasons as a way to start having the compelling emotional driver conversation, right? Well, when people who are getting foreclosed on call me, they're usually reaching out because they're frustrated that they're going to lose all the equity, don't want that to happen. They're afraid it's going to be public knowledge and friends and family are going to find out. And they're just scared they're going to ruin their credit, which is it in your case? And that's a conversation starter, right? To get you into the funnel. And they may say all 3. Great. Run 3 separate funnels on each one of those issues. See how it impacts them. See what they're doing. Okay. So real quickly, and I apologize, we went a little longer on that. My bad. I wasn't paying attention. We had some good conversation going there. You're always going to be more successful whenever your mindset, your behavior, and your technique is congruent. Right? You got to have the goals, plans, and actions to do what you have to do to get what it is you say you want. You got to understand the concepts, strategies, and tactics that will make you more effective and efficient. And you have to have a mindset, right? A successful mindset. Okay, so one thing that I know Ryan promised that we're going to talk about briefly. First of all, thank you guys for participating today. Reinforcement options. I'm under the assumption that everyone will at some point, if you have or haven't, go through the official Sandler Homevester boot camp, whether I train it or not, doesn't make a difference. But you really need to do that to get the language down. Now, Ryan and I are talking about doing some different things. Maybe it's just a monthly team reinforcement like this. Maybe we do a weekly private, right, peak performance group mastery kind of program that's just for your group. And then, of course, we can always add some individual coaching and stuff. So once you guys start thinking about what would make sense for you, what would you would most benefit of, we can break it out in some different things if you want. But start thinking about that, and then Ryan will be reaching out to you. I'm not speaking out of turn here, I hope, Ryan. We'll be reaching out and figuring out what makes sense for the group. So Ryan, why don't you
Correct.
close us up with that?
Yeah, I will be reaching out to the group to get a pulse on what they want to do, and I'll circle back with you. So yeah, Dave, thank you so much. This was great.
Love it. Take care, guys. Good selling out there. Keep buying.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
Awesome. Thank you.
That was good, Dave. Thank you.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'll
Dave.
circle back with you. Thank you.